A few months ago, I've released a Google Workspace add-on that lets you keep your ClickUp tasks in sync with Google Sheets. And I've had this idea because a lot of my clients need to often export their tasks from ClickUp to a spreadsheet. And instead of using the default ClickUp feature, that's quite tedious because it's quite hard to access to and it doesn't keep your tasks in sync, and you have to reorder and format your columns properly to be able to read your data. I thought, let's do that in a little software that's plugged in to Google Sheets. So ClickUp to Sheets was born, and I was very excited to develop that fully by myself with very little knowledge about coding and just my ClickUp expertise. And today I'm happy to share with you the brand new features of ClickUp to Sheets that I've just released, as well as some use cases that I see of the tool and the direction the tool will take with the roadmap and the main big features that are coming up. I'm Ramzi, and welcome to episode 8 of ClickUp to Sheets built in public. Now let's start with the new version's features. And there's 4 main features that came up to ClickUp to Sheets right now. So we have the support of large ClickUp lists, which means right now you can export very large amounts of tasks from ClickUp to Google Sheets. And this is very handy because now you can include subtasks as well in your syncs. So that means for all those long lists that contains tasks and subtasks, maybe third level subtasks, you can bring all of that in straight to Google Sheets. And you can see the parent task name, which is not a native feature of the ClickUp default exports. So I'm going to show you that right after. You can also manage your syncs across different Google spreadsheet files. And the last feature is going to be column preservation, which means if you reordered your columns in between 2 syncs, or if you added an extra column to do some formula or calculation on your sheet, those columns are going to be preserved as they are. They won't be deleted. And that way you can easily create formulas on your data, and those formulas will persist across different syncs. I'm going to show you all those features straight in Google Sheets. Let's go there. And if we open up Google Sheets, we have our new interface of ClickUp to Sheets. You can see separately your syncs that are in this file and the ones that are in other files. So this one is in the content creation file, but there's also a delivery file, this client delivery file that I can access right here from the other tab. You can see the syncs in this file here. Now we have 3 different tabs here. And if I get to my other sheet, again, I can see those syncs here, and I can decide to go into the settings and either update or delete a sync from this view. So that means I can easily delete this sync. And what will happen is that this tab will be deleted from here and my sync will be completely deleted. So that way you stay very clear. And if we refresh our add-on right here, we can see that the daily planet is not here anymore. And that means you can have a clear view on where your syncs are if you have a lot of them. The second feature I'm going to share with you is column preservation. Now, say I want to calculate the difference between the start date and the due date. What I'm going to do is get right here and insert a new column to the left and add a formula. And I'm going to call it date difference. And I'm going to go into equal and add my due date in my formula. So this is a default Google Sheet formula. It calculates the difference between start and due date. Now you can do that in ClickUp, but this is just for the sake of the example. Obviously, the point of using Google Sheets is also to be able to do much more complex formulas and combine formulas and add conditional colors and this kind of data. So if you're very comfortable with these spreadsheet tools, you can go much further than the default ClickUp formula field. Now, let's calculate this difference. I'm going to put the due date here, and I'm going to put the start date as the second argument. And as you can see, it calculated the difference and it suggests me to fill the rest of the rows. That's perfect. And now I can see that I have 28 days difference, 20 days, 0, etc., etc. I can even see the average by just selecting everything. And I could see, for example, that the average difference between the start and due date in my project is 10 days. Now, this is very simple data, but it's just to show you how that column is going to be preserved during our sync update. Now, I'm going to reorder a few columns just because I'm not happy about how this is laid out. So for example, I'm going to put the status as a second column. I prefer having it here. Say I want to see the parent name of that task right here as the first column. That way I know what's the parent name and then the second task name. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now, just to give it a try, we're going to go into that When Enterprises list in ClickUp right here. And I'm going to just rename a task and say, instead of design iterations, I'm going to call it, this is a task update test. And I'm going to even change the batch value maybe and the assignee so that we see if it works properly. I'm going to add 2 assignees. I'll just add some random data, tweak the data right here to be able to see if my update feature works properly. Now let's give it a try. Let's go into my sheet and go into my When Enterprises sync. And what I'm going to do is remove the inclusion of the closed tasks because I don't want to see that anymore. And I don't want to see the description either. And I'm going to click Update Sync. And what will happen is that behind the scenes, it's going to know the exact configuration that you've put in your sync options, and it's going to keep the right columns, and it's going to preserve the columns that you created yourself manually, meaning that formula will apply in the next sync, meaning if some new tasks were created in between, those will be brought in and that formula will apply as well. Now let's go into view syncs and wait for some time, see how it goes. Now you will know in real time that this sheet is currently syncing because now syncs have a little bit of delay so that you're able to bring in very, very, very large lists. And I'm going to show you that right after in a new tab. We're going to bring a pretty long list. This one is going to be a list of 1000 tasks, and you're going to check out if it imports successfully or not. And those tasks have link tasks, text fields, some time tracked, a bunch of data. I can add even more data in between so that we have fun when we bring that in. Let's add some more tags, for example. I'll add the newsletter tag to some of those. This is just for the sake of the example. It's a test list. We're just going to see if it syncs all of that properly. So as you can see, there's a lot of data. I can add some task estimates on some of those tasks, see if it works. Let's do it on some random tasks. Okay. So basically you can just update and fill in the data up to the way you want. And this will be brought up into Google Sheets later. Now let's get back to our Google Sheet and see if our sync worked. And as you can see, our sync has been updated. And there's actually this task. This is a task update test with the right assignee, the date difference, the time estimate, the time spent, and all of the data that we've changed and updated. And obviously our date difference has been kept, and that's the power of these column preservation feature, because our calculations, all our formulas, everything we set up in extra columns in our sync will be preserved as it is. All right, now we're going to see the difference in this subtask inclusion between a ClickUp export and our exports. So just to compare them, we're going to export this list and see the difference between how this is structured versus how a ClickUp export is structured. So we're going to export this list from ClickUp and see the difference between how the data is structured. So if we get to ClickUp and get back to our When Enterprises list, go into Customize, and then go into Export View, Excel. Let's actually click CSV and all columns. And I'm gonna download. Should take a few seconds and should be exported. And then we can get back to Google Sheets. So obviously this is a little bit more tedious. It requires more clicks. I'm gonna go to import and then upload and then bring my CSV and then create a new sheet and import data. So this is the exact same list. And as you can see, the name for stuff is a little bit less user-friendly. This is the name of the list. This is a bunch of data that ClickUp puts in the name. But anyway, it's not that important. It puts the start dates, the due date, and everything. The data is structured basically the same way. Now, the difference is that first off, if you want to see the task parent name, you're going to have to go here and you're going to have to match this subtask ID with a very complex formula with the task right here. Whereas here, we just know exactly that collect client information is part of client onboarding. And we have that mapped understanding of, okay, this is a task. These are its subtasks. This is a task. This is a subtask of that task. These are subtasks of the offboarding. Whereas here, it's much harder to understand if it's a subtask or not. The data is not really structured in a user-friendly way. Same way, the tabs are between brackets. So obviously, like, the data structure is a little bit more complex to understand. Dates are in a written day, month, year format, so all the columns take more space. And basically, ClickUp to Sheets was thought to be a little bit more user-friendly in how the data is pulled and used in a spreadsheet. It's thought for spreadsheets. So this is the second big difference with importing subtasks in your sync with ClickUp to Sheets. Now let's talk about the last new feature, which is importing large lists. So we're gonna get back to ClickUp just to show you the example and get back to our test list. We have 1,157 tasks, and we're gonna see if those tasks are gonna be imported properly from this test list to Google Sheets. So let me get back there and bring in the test list from the marketing space. I'm gonna sync a new list, and then I am going to go into the right workspace, the marketing space, and I think it was a folder list, so let's pick that option, lists without folder. We should have a list appearing called test list. Here's our test list, and once you select your list, it offers you to sync a few things. So we're gonna bring in the description, we're gonna bring in the custom fields, the closed task, and the subtask. That way we're sure we have the largest amount of data possible. And I'm gonna click Start My Sync. Now, as I've explained you, it will just prepare the list with the right columns, and you're gonna have to wait a little bit of time for your data to be synced. And it's just because now we can import large amounts of data. So the tool has to actually compute that data and write it the correct way into Google Sheets. And there are some limitations with Google Workspace add-ons. So I had to go around that, and you're just gonna have that slight 1-minute delay. And if I talk to you about the next features that are coming up on ClickUp to Sheets, it will just be so handy once you've just set up all of those syncs once and forget them.
A few moments later.
Now, as I'm speaking, the data is being written to our sheet. And as you can see, we have some of that data. Now, most of those tasks don't have descriptions. That's why that column is mostly empty. But all of that data has been written, took a few seconds. And we are at line 1159. And if we get back to ClickUp, we had 1,157 tasks in our list. So everything's been imported. The two first rows are used by the system. So everything's been imported successfully. And you can see all of your custom fields, your value fields, your vote fields, your rating, your progress fields, label fields. You can see links, you can click them, and you can use all of that data very easily in your spreadsheet. Now, let's talk about why we would even export our data from ClickUp to Google Sheets. Some of you guys probably already had their own use cases. I've seen on some forums, on Reddit, some people wanting to export their ClickUp data for a bunch of reasons, but I'm going to summarize why I feel like this kind of tool could be useful for you. So there's a few use cases where ClickUp to Sheets can come in handy. Number one, it could be reporting and analytics. So say you want to share the data with corporate, with a higher level job, and they're not on ClickUp, but you need to share this project over progress. You're going to do those formulas and calculations on your ClickUp rows, or you can create pivot tables in another sheet. And each time you update your data, that pivot table or those different charts that you're going to create in another sheet are going to be updated. And I'm going to share with you how it works and what kind of KPIs you can pull out from ClickUp that is not natively offered by the ClickUp dashboards. And in another video, I'll explain you how you can make the most of all of those ClickUp KPIs that you cannot have in a ClickUp dashboard. Now, another useful use case could be keeping a backup of your ClickUp lists. Now, obviously, ClickUp offers a trash, but it might happen that you've deleted a list by mistake and you've forgotten to pull out the data from the trash, and it's gone forever. Now, with ClickUp to Sheets and with a new feature that's coming up next month, which is scheduled syncs, even if that list happens to be deleted, ClickUp to Sheets will know, and it will not clear out your data from Google Sheets. You'll just keep it as is, and you can always bring that data back, do a ClickUp import to save yourself from big data loss. Now, one last interesting use case could be imports and exports. You could do some migrations, you could do some batch editing with ClickUp to Sheets. That feature is not out yet. It's quite large to implement, but it's going to be the two-way sync feature, and I'll talk about it in the roadmap later. It will let you create and update tasks from Google Sheets and import and export data between tools. So I plan to release the scheduled things late 2024. That should be the next feature coming up. And if you're watching this video in 2025, it's probably already out there. And the next feature is going to be two-way sync. So beginning of next year, you're going to be able to create new tasks from ClickUp to Sheets. You're going to be able to go in here and add some new rows. So say I want to create 10 more tasks. You're just going to put the task name, description. You could put even the part name, the tags, and all of that information, and basically create new tasks on the go from a spreadsheet. And why is it super interesting? Because if you want to create your tasks and then you want to assign those tasks to someone in a batch, you just use the Google Sheets feature. You just drag and drop everything, and everything will be assigned to that person, to that user. Same way here, if you want to set the due date, or if you want to set some start dates, you just copy it here, drop it here, and everything will be reflected in ClickUp once your sync is performed. Now, this two-way sync feature is probably going to come early 2025. And again, if you're watching this video in mid-2025, hopefully it will already be out and you can make the most of it in ClickUp to Sheets. And then there's two more minor features that I'm going to bring in. So it'll probably be customizable sync frequency. You're going to be able to customize if you want your syncs to be scheduled every day, every 6 hours, every 12 hours, and you can fine tune and set that up yourself. And I'll also add cell colors from ClickUp statuses and custom fields. So if we're in ClickUp and we have statuses in green, statuses in blue, in purple, I want to bring in those colors so that it's reflected as is in Google Sheets. But because I feel those are more minor features, they'll probably come in later. Now, if you have any more ideas, you can reply to the comments of this video. I'd love to be able to add some new features to ClickUp to Sheets that you might find useful. And if you want to try out the tool, just head out to clickuptosheets.com or go through the link in the description below. There's a 7-day trial. And for now, there's only one plan after that 7 days. It's the Pro plan at $7 a month. And as those new features come in, especially the two-way sync, I will definitely increase the price and I'll add more pricing tiers. So if you want to make the most of ClickUp to Sheets and be sure to access all of its features, you have to subscribe now with the early bird Pro plan pricing. Otherwise, there'll definitely be a price ramp up as new features come in. Now, as I said, you can always try before you buy. You click get the add-on or you go through the link in the description and you'll be able to download ClickUp to Sheets and install it to your Google account from the Google Workspace Marketplace. Now, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time on ClickUp.